Thank you. You can observe the exit signs to the rear of the road. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have an agenda check or are we all set? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the presentations. Dr. Zacher, thank you.
I'm going to try this without a microphone. Usually I project fairly well, and with my hearing problem, I probably speak a lot louder than I need to. Before we get into the slide part of the presentation this evening, I would like to remind you of a little bit of background in terms of the budget development process. The process for me began shortly after I arrived here at the beginning of November. At that time, I reviewed the current budget situation for this current year, as well as the budget history. It's not an easy task to follow in the footsteps of others because people have different thought processes and procedures. In some cases, I had some difficulty in comparing one year's line items to another. There seemed to be some inconsistency, so it was really hard for me to get a flavor for the history of the district, say, over a 5-year period. I had some shortcomings with the software that we were using, and it wasn't configured in a manner that I was comfortable with, so that presented some problems as well. From my perception, the budget here has been primarily from the top down. There didn't seem to be a well-established, what I call bottom-up process. I attempted to institute a new approach this year that I have used successfully elsewhere. And it's essentially a bottom-up and a top-down approach to budget development. I shared that approach with my administrative leadership team, and I went through the processes that I have used in other locations. The process uses what I call preliminary budget worksheets. And those worksheets have a series of questions that staff members are asked to complete. This forms the basis for the budget development that will ensue. For example, one of the first questions might be, how has the current budget enabled you or restricted you from accomplishing your objectives? This would then point out from a teacher, staff member, building principal level, what major issues may exist in the current funding plan for the district. Other questions related to the current budget experience, goals and objectives, and a construct of the budget based upon educational and support needs. These preliminary budget worksheets were given to the building and district level administrators as a package. They were asked to review them, evaluate what had been developed, and to engage the staff in completing the worksheets. Perhaps there hadn't been enough preparation on my part to prepare people for it, or perhaps there was a level of frustration on the part of the staff in believing that those worksheets would be used in the budget development process. And they really weren't completed to my satisfaction. I gave them back to the building level administrators and asked to review them again. They still did not return in a fashion where they were especially useful. Once again, that plan was designed to provide significant opportunity for all instructional staff to participate in the budget development process. And as I said, it didn't work well. I think probably one of the primary issues was that people really didn't feel that there was a value in taking that much time for fear that there wouldn't be enough money to fund the issues and objectives that they felt were important. We moved forward, however, and we're relying then primarily on a top-down approach using the existing district data. What typically happens here is a certain amount of money is allocated for certain areas or for certain line items, and then that money is kind of plugged in. There may or may not be background information that would explain specifically what goals or objectives were being developed or supported, or what specific items might be purchased. When the first estimates of state revenue arrived in early February, we realized quite clearly the difficulty we would have to construct a budget. And I will show you a slide later on that shows from the governor's proposals in early February up to the current point in time. The funding gap was immense, and I dealt with that funding gap before the public on several occasions. At that point, we asked administrators to consider budget reductions. We didn't go about it, once again, from the bottom-up approach. We really looked at basically percentage cuts across the board. In my opinion, and in my experience, that certainly is not the best way to go about budget development. The administrators had a great deal of difficulty recommending areas to cut. Part of the very basic problem, in my opinion, is that there hadn't been a priority listing of goals and objectives so that you could simply move up from the bottom to the level that you needed to cut. As is typical with human behavior, the best cuts and those that were most recommended were those cuts that involved someone else. Everyone had a specific desire to protect their own interests, their turf, so to speak, and that certainly is understandable. However, when we get to the district level, we still need to make those reductions. So we looked for help from the building administration and supervisors to suggest areas where we might cut. Frankly, we didn't really get very far. You may recall that at one point I developed a list of possible cuts, and I was careful not to describe them as proposed cuts. I brought them here and shared them with the Board of Education, and we had some discussion on them. However, the board began to feel some of the same pain that the rest of us were feeling, and that it was very difficult to determine what areas were less important than others. I asked for a list of priorities based upon needs, and yet there still continues to be a lack of recommended cuts. I solicited some feedback from the community. I did get some via email. In some cases, there were some significant issues that were raised, which indicated to me the priorities of individuals, at least, within the community. I developed a list of cuts. I shared them with staff members, and as I said, I shared them with the Board of Education and the community. There continued to be a problem, and I think at that point we began to receive the heartfelt and emotional pleas of people to please preserve existing programs and staffing. Because of other issues and concerns in the district, the process didn't work in a positive way. When we went through the final stages of this, and basically specific areas had been developed or cut, the main response we got was in the area of athletics. We heard first from the music department, if my recollection is correct, in terms of some serious issues that were concerned because there was a rumor that we were cutting marching band. The next area was athletics, and athletics in general, because we had already begun to cut in the athletic department. The biggest hue and cry came as a result of the recommended cut in modified athletics. At our last meeting, you heard a commitment from the board to restore modified athletics. We still didn't have any good feeling for how that could be done. Where do we take the money from to deal with those kinds of costs? One suggestion that had been recommended earlier was to change the modified from 7, 8, 9, and then varsity 10, 11, 12, which would be the way we do it in our football program. I was told at that time that that wasn't a feasible solution because there may be difficulty in gaining enough contests for those teams to play. One of the things that I hadn't considered was to consider some sort of maybe a compromise within that, where maybe we could have a 7, 8, 9 program, and maybe we could place part of those that modified teams with 7, 8, 9 competition arena and some of the 7, 8. I still don't have a good feeling whether or not that can work. I requested the athletic director to look at ways that we can maneuver and move money within that budgeted area to still provide modified sports. During my presentation this evening, I will share with you some of the suggestions that came from the community. Bringing us up to recent times, there was a special meeting held last Thursday at the Eldridge Fire Hall. The meeting was conducted by a group of community members and was conducted specifically by Bill Hamilton, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance. Certainly, that presentation was not developed in coordination with the school district and Board of Education and was not district authorized. Bill did present an alternate plan. That plan optimistically proposed a spending plan that would result in a new tax levy that was less than half of what I proposed, with fewer reductions in program and staff. And my response was, what was not to like about it? Later on, I will discuss what I see as serious concerns with the assumptions made and conclusions drawn by Mr. Hamilton. In any event, I am concerned that his proposal may ensure that the public will not support the Board of Education spending plan that I will hopefully get adoption of tonight. It might have been more helpful had any proposed plans been shared with the district prior to presentation. Certainly, maybe we could have incorporated some of those into our plan. Since then, my staff and I have worked diligently to review Mr. Hamilton's proposal. We have met with our financial advisors to provide recommendations and information about debt service, use of reserves, and other revenues. We have met with other groups at their request to review our thoughts and processes and to reconsider any possible restoration of proposed cuts in programs and services. Unfortunately, we have little financial room for maneuvering. I am very aware that the position I have taken on tonight's proposed budget is unpopular. Despite that, I am recommending it as a fiscal plan that takes into consideration the financial status of the state, our district's financial status, including our debt service obligation over the next 10 to 15 years, and the need to provide sustainable educational programming for our students. I'll try to stay out of your way, but these are essentially the same figures that you saw the last time we met. The proposed budget is proposed at $27,596,582, 4.7% higher than the current budget of $26,357,767. We're proposing a tax levy increase of approximately 7.3%, and this does reflect the loss of those individuals, which I will share with you shortly.
Can you walk around the mic? Because sometimes you're turning and we can't
I will
hear
try.
you. Thank you.
Careful with the carpet there, Larry.
I certainly will not be as good at this as the students are who perform, but I'll do my best. Here are the major budget increases, and I tried to change this a little bit from the last time. We used percentages. And some people have requested, could we see some dollar figures to get some sort of a feel for that? And while we won't have specific line item by line item information for you tonight, that information will follow when our budget brochure is prepared immediately following the budget adoption. You can look at these figures to get some sort of an idea of the large numbers that we're looking at. People ask for some more specific information on staffing reductions, and so I've provided those for you on this chart. These are given in FTEs, full-time equivalent staff numbers, and that means that a number of 1 on here does not necessarily mean that it's 1 person. It means it's 1 full-time equivalent person. So there could be 2 half persons in a number 1 item. When the public talked about reinstating modified sports, some of the ideas that the public had come up with are included here. And I would like to respond to them to give you an idea of how we look at things, sometimes compared to how the public looks at things. It was suggested we use an additional $80,000 from reserves to plug that gap. We are heavily relying on reserves in this coming budget year. To suggest that we should increase that, to me, would not be my recommendation. It was suggested we use $80,000 from the projected increase that we have in state aid, because we have been told that we're going to get approximately $183,000 more from the state. You will recall that I suggested, as did Mr. Hamilton suggested, that the projected state aid is rarely what we receive. It is always significantly lower than what is projected. So to take more money from that revenue flow would not be a wise decision. There was a suggestion made to increase the tax levy. I've already explained to the community that the tax levy and the tax burden in this community is extremely high. We were appalled when we saw the number 7.3 when we plugged in our final figures, and we have serious reservations whether the community can even support 7.3. To take another 80,000, which would be roughly another 0.8 in the tax levy, would bring it over 8%. Reduce 1 or more full-time teaching positions. We have cut deeply into the staff. We have cut deeply into the instructional staff. We have tried to do that in a manner that considers staffing levels and that takes into consideration the programs that are offered as well as average class size. I personally would support and recommend replacing teachers before I would recommend restoring the entire athletic program. Do I think athletics are important? Absolutely. I have 3 sons and I have grandchildren, and I understand the value of education, and my 3 sons all participated in the small school in 3 sports. Do we need to retain sports? Absolutely. We need to retain extracurricular? Absolutely. But we need to look long and hard at 27, 28 students in an elementary classroom. That's not something that we want to sustain over a long period of time. We need to look at those numbers carefully, and we need to consider ways that we can restore teachers in the classroom. Use volunteer unpaid coaches for all sports. Stipends are currently required by existing contracts. I mentioned at our last meeting that we're having difficulty even filling the cost positions on a paid basis. I'm not sure we would get the support to fund all of our athletic programs on an unpaid basis. Are there other ways around that? Could we negotiate lower stipends for salaries for coaches? Yes, we could do that. But certainly that's a negotiations issue, and I can't be standing up here now saying to you that that's feasible, that it's doable, or if it's even the right way to go. We have to bargain in good faith with our unions, and we have to make sure that we are representing ourselves in a positive way so that we can continue to cooperate and work with each other. Sell excess property. Up until very recently, I didn't know that that option existed, and it might be something that we can look at down the road, but that's not something that's going to be sustainable over a long period of time. It's not like we can go out every year and sell property to support our programs. Eliminate JV sports and go to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that is our current recommendation. There are still concerns and limitations within that, and we may have to revisit that and look at it closer to make sure that it can work. If it doesn't work or can't work, then what we need to take a look at is, are there other areas that we might consider? One of the things that was discussed before that was recommended by a group of people was to eliminate the athletic trainer position. If you were here last week, you heard that there are some who believe that that's certainly a possibility. There are others who believe that that would be an undesirable path to take. Close the Elbridge Elementary School. I've already addressed this in the past. That's not feasible for the upcoming school year, but it's certainly something that we're going to have to look long, hard, and carefully at as student population decreases, and if we still don't continue to get adequate funding from the state. Fundraise for some or all of the $80,000. The sum part, I said that might be a viable option, which is one of the reasons why sometimes we get accused of not representing numbers accurately. One of the things that we're trying not to do is predetermine that through community support, volunteers, and other ways that we won't be able to fund anything at all. We haven't cut everything to the bone, so therefore if we could get some movement in terms of how we coach our teams, how we fund coaches, how we pay for transportation and other issues, we want to have enough money in here to make sure we can restore things as situations change. A budget is not a rigid document that can't be changed. It's a plan, and the plans can change. You're going to get a new superintendent. It is my intention that I would meet with that new superintendent as soon as he is successfully signed and review all major changes that are going to take place in this district for his consideration. We need to give the new superintendent opportunities to have input to this process. Negotiate a pay freeze with all employees. We have not gotten written feedback from our organizations, but in general, that does not appear to be a viable option at this time. Even if eventually it was to happen, it would be unconscionable for us to budget for that now because we would not be negotiating in good faith. We have made reductions in athletics, and I shared with you before a general reduction in materials and supplies. The elimination of assistant coaches, that number is under review. I believe it's probably closer to 34,600 hours as opposed to 39,000. I think we copied one from Modified Sports into that, or it may even be left over in the contract from JV football assistant. I'm not exactly sure. Realignment of the athletic teams, I left the same number in there. If we eliminate JV and run a modified varsity program, there may be more savings in there. And we may be able to then look at reinstating some of those other sports that we've got that are listed below, golf, tennis, and indoor track. That's another area where we recently received requests from people to reconsider cutting those sports. They are not high-cost sports. However, they do have limited enrollment. Probably the one that, without a lot of feedback from the athletic department, I would say that indoor track would probably be one that I would consider as probably the first one of those three that I would restore. We did get some information from an individual, at least one parent of one child in the district who is apparently an outstanding golfer,
And the question was, if we don't offer golf, how can that individual then move along a path that might be something that they should pursue? It is possible to create teams of one with neighboring school districts, and certainly we would look to do those sorts of things so that they would be viable for our individual students who participate in individual sports to participate. We left in here some of the music and extracurricular advisorships so that you would know that those reductions are still part of the proposed budget. I basically think that we've probably discussed this enough. I don't think it's necessary to belabor it. And at this point, I would like to take an opportunity to respond to some of the issues and items and assumptions that were in Mr. Hamilton's presentation of last Thursday. We've done this in column form, in chart form, and I've tried to be true to the approach that Bill used when he presented them, so that if you have those documents, you can compare them. And the first item is the administrative reductions. Bill essentially agreed with our estimations there, a reduction of 3 administrators with a potential savings of $246,000. So there's no difference. Bill then, if I understood this correctly, suggested that we eliminate the assistant superintendent for instruction and put a tag of $113,280 on that. That is already included in the item above. So that is not a reduction in expenditures. The assistant superintendent for instruction position has been incorporated with the position of director of special education, so really you don't gain both. Additionally, it should be important to you to know that when you have a person who has rights to a position based upon seniority, you can move them, but you can't reduce their pay. So if you move the assistant superintendent for instruction into a different position, director of special education, high school principal, or what have you, you cannot reduce the salary. The next item was keep teachers in school. I wasn't sure exactly what that meant at first, but that is meant to be a reduction in the line item of our budget that pays for substitute teachers. You will not reduce expenses by reducing a line item. You can make any number 0, but if you still have those expenses as the year progresses, it makes no difference. If you budget your fuel costs for your vehicle over the course of a year, and you say, I'm going to spend $1,500 in fuel for the year, and you budget that, but then you cross it out and put it at 0, it doesn't mean you don't buy fuel. So we can't reduce items that we have reason to believe we will have expenditures for. The budget to actual, I think what that meant was, let's take a look what we actually spend in an area or over the entire budget and see if we can reduce what we are budgeting to what we actually spend. That sounds like a good idea, and in many respects it is, as long as you have room to make adjustments when you need them. Back to the automobile example, if you don't budget anything for automobile repairs and your transmission goes out on your truck, you still have to get it fixed or stop driving, and that's not an option for most of us. So we really need to take a look at whether or not we can have any wiggle room in any areas. But despite that, we already estimate that we've reduced across the budget approximately $586,000 which is already more than Mr. Hamilton recommended. In operations and maintenance, we're in the opposite end of that field because Bill has suggested 172,000 in reductions, and we have reduced it approximately 70,000. And part of the problem there was there were significant reductions in those areas in the current budget. And those reductions were taken as line item options of, for example, negative $10,000, without indicating what areas they were designed to reduce, and I don't believe that that's the type of budgeting that I wanted to bring into this operation. The reduction of health insurance on the 3 district administrators that were mentioned above. The bill suggested that that was a $40,000 savings. We've computed it to be $5,500. The director of special education had health insurance as an individual, $5,500. The other individuals are still receiving health insurance. One retired, they get health insurance in retirement, and the other changed positions. So the net result is $5,500. The reduction in Social Security pension costs for those 3 administrators, you can see the difference in terms of what was projected and what we project. Reduction of advisors and department chairs, we agreed on. Settle legal issues. Sounds like a good idea. I'd like to see that happen. But I don't think that we can count on that happening to the tune of reducing our budget by $180,000. You've already read in the newspapers about what our current costs are running. It might be nice if we could get these things resolved. It might be nice also if we didn't keep getting sued, and we can sit and argue about those things till the cows come home, and we're not going to get any resolution there. It would be irresponsible to have legal fees and not budget for them. You heard here before that over recent years, I think the year before this one, the legal fees were somewhere around $100,000. The budgeted amount for this year was $60,000. So we've already budgeted less for the current year than even historically we've shown that we spend. Reduced BOCES are equivalent. We worked hard on the BOCES package, and that was a hard one to do. BOCES is touted as being a money-saving operation for school districts through sharing costs, and of course BOCES aid is certainly a very important benefit to BOCES programming. We took a hard look at BOCES coasters that deal with non-instructional areas because there was a threat that that might not be funded in the final budget. The governor suggested that we could not continue to afford to do that. So we looked at those areas. You can see a major difference here. We basically were running flat with the current year with increases in costs and reductions in services, but we have 2 high-needs special education youngsters that are estimated to cost us $245,000 next year. You have to budget for special education needs. So we don't have much option there. Freeze wages, we already talked about that. It's a contractual issue. If we did that without negotiations, we'd either find ourselves fighting through grievances and or improper practice charges. The same thing was true with the increasing health insurance contributions. If you get an agreement to do that with your various organizations, certainly it's a way to save money, but we can't go into a budget document without allowing for those potential costs. Vision insurance is the same thing, and essentially you can see a differential here between Mr. Hamilton's estimated reductions in hours of about $1.4 million. Debt service. In Mr. Hamilton's presentation, he pointed out that debt service is a fairly simple thing to understand, like the mortgage on a house. Well, our debt service increase for next year over this year is $942,000. You remember the bill talked about using Bernie Dunnigan's financial advisor group. We met with Bernie Dunnigan Thursday afternoon for 3 hours to discuss capital project expenditures, debt service, use of reserves, etc. I made sure I asked Bernie Dunnigan himself twice if I was right about the $942,000 increase in debt service. He said yes. Wage increases, if we budgeted nothing for wage increases, that reflects back on the whole issue of a freeze. Even if our unions didn't get any change in their contracts due to step increases, there would be some increase. Would it be $309,000? No, I don't project it would be that high. But we can't just ignore the fact that we have to negotiate with our bargaining units. I don't believe Bill, any place in his presentation, mentioned anything about energy costs, fuel costs. Your guess is as good as mine as to where it's going to be next year. It seems like at the gas pump it goes up 10 cents a week. We budgeted an increase of $162,000. Legal fees we've already gone over. That's your increase of $180,000 over what Bill projected. Substitute teachers we've already mentioned. Now, because the way these things were presented, there's duplication on slides, so you don't just add these things up. As you can see, if you did that, it would be totally wrong, because you would be duplicating some of those differences. Estimated revenues. The budgeted state aid is at the top of the chart. Once again, that is not what is projected. That is lower than projected. Because the reality is, as Bill agreed, much less than is budgeted. Federal job stimulus, this is money that was available to us for the current year, which we did not spend, and we will use that toward next year. Our other revenues are at $711,000 and sales tax at $75,000. Remember, there are reductions in our ARRA funds, our job restoration funds, our federal funds. Bill had the lower two on his chart. I did not find the $741,000 on the chart. The capital project is a significant piece of the long-range budget question. We know we're completing phase one, we're rapidly moving into phase two, and certainly there's a lot of information to digest in terms of this area. This is a graph that shows you your debt service obligations over the term of this debt service. You can see it's very low in the year 2011. It rises rapidly. It levels off at just under $2 million. And then toward the year 2027, 2028, it drops off precipitously. This is an ongoing cost that you're going to have over a relatively long period of time. This line, the blue line, is the state aid that will be used to cover a large portion of the cost of the capital project of $21.9 million. The red line, the district is going to use capital reserves, Excel aid, and interfund transfers from the debt service fund to offset the local share of the capital project. This shows how that begins to change, and it slows down the rate of growth and obligation you have early on in the project. Please note now how these various lines change the amount of money that it costs the taxpayers in the first 4 years of the capital project. This is data from the state aid runs, and it can be a little bit confusing. It's a very, very busy slides, so I'll work through it rather slowly. All that comes in under the yellow is the governor's proposal. If you look at the colors are a little different. It kind of looks purplish over here. It's supposed to be blue. If you look at the blue numbers, you see the various types of state aid that we received or should be receiving in the current school year. If you see the little letters and numbers right underneath the year, those indicate that these come from actual state documents. If you went online, you could duplicate all of these figures online. If you look at the red indicates kind of the take-backs. So you'll see the GEA, gap elimination adjustment, and you can see that in 2010-11, the district had a GEA, gap elimination adjustment, of about $2.18 million. If you look at the next column over, the gap elimination adjustment for the coming school year is $2,862,000. Obviously, if you look at the difference there, it is significant. It's going up $679,000. Or if you want to look at the adjustment has gone up, the amount of money received goes down. The net increases that you will look at are at the bottom. Always notice, and as we go through these charts, you will notice that total aid does not go down as much as general aid, because our building aid is going up. But remember, you don't use building aid to run your operation. The building aid feeds back into the capital project. So although you do have increased revenues to a certain extent in terms of building aid, those cannot be used in your operating budget. Well, these colors don't come out well at all. That's supposed to be green. The other's supposed to be yellow, that's supposed to be green. So the next area is the budget that was enacted. So this shows you, essentially on the same chart, basically the same information. We'll highlight a little bit of it for you. Over here, this is the gap elimination adjustment. So you're seeing essentially there the same numbers that you're seeing over on the other side. So they remain at, the adjustment remains at $679,150, which is higher than the previous year. Total state aid cut was $2,862,427. So you can see here that there's really no difference in that particular information. Now, if you look at the little red box, it's kind of in the center of that right-hand column. You can see the number 183,477. That was restored in state aid. Despite that, the district has lost about $5 million in aid over 2 years. The state aid runs did not include the federally funded jobs money for the last year that the district had. The reason they did that, I believe the reason they did that, is that they didn't put that money in there. It looks as if you didn't lose as much money as you actually lost. Over in the red area, you can see there are a number of differences between the original governor's proposal and the state aid that was finally enacted, and that has caused a great deal of confusion in people. Now, part of our plan is to use this data with the $620,438 to supplement our coming year's budget. The red section shows then how the differences in our revenue picture will be greater than what has been reported. So the shortfall is greater than what you would read in the papers. Which brings us back to where we were. I mean, if I were you sitting out there, I would look in here and say, well, they didn't do anything. We had the same thing we had before. We called it something different. We basically didn't accept anything from the plan that we received on Thursday night. And the reason for that is that the situation, in my opinion, is really dire. The Board of Education has been struggling with it. We were working on this information all day, most of the day, all day Friday, all day Saturday, a good portion of the time yesterday and today. And I just don't have any nice rosy pictures to give you. The situation is very serious. We have to look at sustainability. We can't look at one-shot cures for the problem. The picture has changed. You're going to see probably at least 2 more years that are similar to this year and last. I don't see much changing in that regard. What happens after this? To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I don't know where the board is on this package. I do know that we received some phone calls from board members throughout the day that are concerned about maybe putting some things back. If we put anything back in, my position would be, well, we've got a couple of options. We could put things back as a proposition. I don't know if that would serve anybody's purposes. Or we could put things back and take something else out. Or we could rearrange how we allocate money within categories. Remember, the current year's budget is about $880,000 less than the prior years. This budget we're proposing here is higher than the current year, but it isn't all that much higher than the previous year. I mean, that's on top of losing a significant number of positions. Some people have inquired about what we do next if the board adopts the budget. The board is adopting a budget that indicates the maximum amount of dollars that may be spent by the district in the ensuing year. The public will vote on a proposition that authorizes the Board of Education to collect taxes to support that spending plan. And as you know, when you vote, you don't know what your tax situation is going to be exactly. Equalization rates may change, assessments may change, etc. But those things are true regardless of where we are. If the budget does not pass on May 17th, what are our options? I explained some of these before. The Board of Education may elect to revote. They could revote the same amount, they could revote a different amount. If it fails the second time, the Board of Education has no options, they must adopt a contingent budget. And there's a time limit for doing that. If the Board of Education wishes, they can adopt a contingent budget after the first failed vote. We haven't done all of the calculations on a contingent budget, but it is my belief from an early look at the figures that a contingent budget would actually be slightly higher than the budget we're proposing. Now, I'm not suggesting that we would come out with a higher budget, but I just want you to be aware of the fact that a contingent budget could be that high. That essentially completes what I have to tell you. Please make sure that you take advantage of the opportunities to learn more. We will begin work on the budget brochure. We've begun to work on the budget brochure, but we'll be working on actually writing and producing the budget brochure over the next few days. We need to have that done by Friday, and we need to get that out to the printer so it can be mailed home. In that budget, you will get the same kind of line item information you've gotten in the past, as well as other information on the budget process. We will have a budget hearing on May 10th, and at that same night, we will have a meet the candidates session at 6:30. Thank you.
I'd like to move on to the public comment section, and
Good evening. We have a number of people who have signed up. I think at this point we do have 18 people, so please, when you step to the microphone, we are going to be using the code of conduct. You can be appropriate. We've done a good job of that of late, so I appreciate that. I am going to work hard to make sure we're on the time schedule. Each person is allotted 5 minutes. I'm going to give a friendly reminder if you're getting close to 5 minutes. As I said before, we have 18 people signed up, so please respect the 5-minute rule, because with that, we are looking at probably an hour and a half of comments here. So, first on the microphone this evening will be Jamie Cicino.
Good evening. I have stood before members of the school board on several occasions in the past talking about all of the duties that guidance performs throughout the year. Tonight I stand in front of you for a different reason. Just about 2 weeks ago, our guidance world as we know it was sent spinning. We were told that we were going to lose about 35% of the counseling staff. That doesn't include the clerical position that we are losing also. We are going to lose a school counselor and 1.5 school social workers. Mr. McIntyre would be moved to the middle school, and I would remain at the high school. The current ratio of students to counselor is 1 to 240 at the high school and 1 to 560 at the middle school. With the proposed cuts taking place, the numbers would be 1 to 480 students at the high school and 1 to 560 at the middle school. New York State guidelines suggest a student counselor ratio of 1 to 250. As the counselor at the high school who has worked with 11th and 12th grade students only for the past 2 years, I cannot fathom how we will operate. I spent from September to January working with students and parents on college applications. I have spent countless hours in conversation, writing letters and recommendations, talking to admissions reps, and training parents and students on our Naviance program. In all honesty, this takes up 75% of my week. I do not want to lose this valuable time with the parents and students, as I find it very important. From January to March, I'm working with the same students and parents regarding financial aid. At the same time, I'm beginning to work with the juniors to get them prepared for their college journey, and the cycle begins all over. In the meantime, I am scheduling students and building a master schedule with the principals so that we can give the students the courses that they need to be competitive with other students who are pursuing a college career. Mr. McIntyre, at the same time, is working on school-to-work activities. This year alone, he has placed every 10th grade student in a job shadow program. He is attending team meetings for 9th grade students to make sure that they are transitioning and maintaining in high school successfully. He's also meeting with all other students that need or request academic, social, emotional, and career college counseling. We have 2 to 3 pages of activities that we do on a yearly basis. This does not include the day-to-day activities that occur with no thought. We were told that our jobs would essentially become a triage situation, resulting in treating the highest need students first and only. And our proactive role that we have now would no longer exist. We would have to decide what was important at the time and that other activities would not occur. We don't want to decide one activity is more important than another because they're all valuable. This is frightening to us in an economy where times are tough and everyone is struggling. This is not a time to lose support for our students. We feel that these staff reductions will seriously impact so many of our students by limiting our ability to provide services to them and would be detrimental to their academic, social, emotional, and career and college development. We understand that times are tough and that cuts need to be made. As a department, we would still be taking cuts, but by reinstating the middle school position and leaving the 2 guidance counselors at the high school, we feel confident in our ability to provide appropriate services to students and parents. This will allow the school social worker to stay in the elementary school to provide services to the younger kids. Unfortunately, our students have to face daily struggles that no child should have to face. Let's please give them the support that they need to be successful in school and in life. Thank you.
Can I take this out? I'm going to start talking while I walk because I'm running out of time. I have a bunch of cards here because I usually, just to keep me on track as I start battling what I am now. But I'm here today with an impossible task, I feel, and that's I'm kind of talking to you and everybody out here. That's why I moved over here, and that I was asked to make a statement that's going to make everything better because I represent all the teachers. I'm the president of the teachers union, for those who don't know that. And I got told by a lot of people what to say. So we're going to tell you to stop litigation, to reinstate this person, that person. Of course, I have to ask you all to resign. You could ask that 100 times. It's not going to happen. And you're not happy, they're not happy. How are we going to move forward here? And I guess probably the best thing I think I can do today is talk about how we're going to move forward, because that's the reality. I can't believe I'm standing here where we are. I used the term surreal. I think it was the first thing Dr. Zarek and I agreed on for the first time in a long time when I read online the Firehouse Special, is what I called it. I thought I was reading off the menu at Tully's. I would love to believe that budget because I don't want to believe this budget. I don't know what to believe. I looked at all these numbers. I'm first to admit I'm not, anybody can come up here and present numbers to me and I don't know what they're going to say. So I'm scared to death after 27 years here and 5 superintendents because I've never not really understood what is going on. But I can tell you this, what are we really talking about? I'm sorry about the glasses, I can't read anymore. I gotta look. What are we really talking about? We're talking about the only opportunity that a ton of children, a ton of students have in this district. The only opportunity. Now look at the position we're in. The only opportunity for what? Well, I was reading the paper last week following the economic recovery that, by the way, is happening. Well, the jobs that are recovering at the greatest rate are jobs that require education. They're the ones that are going to come back. That's what we should be talking about. Now, I get disturbed. I agreed on another thing. I mean, I loved sports when I was a kid, but I can't even think about sports right now. That's not our primary mission. Sports aren't going to take anybody into the future and give them a career. Very, very few people. That's delusional to think otherwise. It's going to be the education that's going to put people in some kind of job and contribute to the society. So it scares me that we've lost that focus, and I almost feel like whoever makes the most eloquent pitch today wins. I don't know. I'm sure that's not the way it is. That's how I feel. That's my feeling. I'm sorry. I think we need to get back to our basic primary mission. When I'm listening to what I see as Band-Aids to modify a program to make this work, when we're talking about fixing something for one student, something they aspire to, that's wonderful, but I just don't know if that's reality. And I'm wondering, in the end, what can you people support? There's a lot of people not here that are going to vote. What can 1 minute? Oh my goodness, I'm a third of the way through. You said friendly. That was friendly. So, what can you support? Can we drop where we've been and figure out how to support this so it doesn't get worse? I don't know how it's going to get worse. I feel like we're being gutted. There was an important point, though, that I lost. And I guess it's just the budget crisis this year. Is it a surprise? The previous superintendent told me we were climbing higher and higher up a building last year and it was going to hit. I don't know how we got ourselves here, the decisions we've made. Regardless of what they were, we knew we were going to be in this position. I'm here, we're going to be in it 2 more years. Are we going to be able to keep this place open and keep this place moving? I'm really concerned about that. This has been my career, but that's not important. It's about the students. This is the only school district here for public education. The pay freeze, I got to respond to that because let's be honest here. Our contract expires for the teachers June 30th, 2011. I don't know where either budget gets the savings up there, because we don't have a bargain raise. So that's on the table, and I'm bugged about the fact that when it gets put out there and put out in the papers, looking like, if I could only get my teachers to cooperate, we can fix this. We didn't create this problem. I'm not saying you created the whole problem. It's a state budget situation. There were better choices the governor could have made. There were better choices. The austerity is somewhat forced, in my opinion. But that's on the table, as far as I'm concerned, still on the table. So, my second 1 minute. Well, if I hit this great, compelling closing statement I made, I just want to know, I'm pleading, can we drop where we've been when we look at this in the end? I don't know, because I don't know if there's a level of trust here. But this is real serious stuff. Whatever number comes out of tonight, we have to listen to what was said, because if we don't adopt that, where do we go? That's my big concern. Where do we go? Thank you.
Good.
Okay, I'm out of my comfort zone, as many of us are. These are tough times. I prefer to be in my classroom with your kids. But all of us grow to know and care for. I'm tough. I'm a problem solver by trade, and right now I'm having trouble answering the simplest questions. Mrs. McClurg, what classes will I be able to take next year? Mrs. McClurg, why are we always in the news? And I'm having trouble even responding, knowing if I should, to comments such as, Mom wants to move. I really want to graduate from this school. I've grown up here. I started here in kindergarten. I'm a junior. I don't want to move. When people ask me where I'm from, I hang my head down. I don't want to say. So I whisper, JE. I don't know what to say to them. So tonight I have questions and comments of my own. I feel as a teacher, many of us have been silent for too long. Some of us have been afraid to speak for fear of retaliation. We've heard some stories, I don't know if they're true, stories I don't want to believe. And at this point, I feel that perhaps our silence has spoken too loud. We do care about your community, we do care about your children. And so when I heard that one of my colleagues had been cut, many of my colleagues, I wondered, what is our long-term plan? How were these cuts decided upon? We have worked hard here to develop a program for technology, a Gen 21 program, and one of my colleagues has been an integral part in that. I teach high school math, and while many of you may remember the quadratic formula, maybe you can even sing it, I'll bet you haven't used it since high school. But I will bet you have used basic accounting, you've used a calculator, a computer, maybe some marketing. You've definitely written a resume. And you can do that very well if you walk out of Karen's classroom. So she didn't know that I was going to stand up tonight and talk about her, and I didn't know she was going to follow me in the door and sign up right behind me. So I really don't want to mess this up for her. But a lot of the cuts hit us hard. I want to know why we cut 30 teachers. I know these are tough times. The governor said, we've got to cut, we've all got to cut, we've all got to give more. I'm willing to give more. I would vote for a 0% pay freeze if I had the opportunity, knowing I was going to save for your children and for my colleagues. I have not been given that opportunity. Please don't tell the public that I would not do that for any of you. So I do want to know why we cut 30 here. It is so disproportionate to other schools in this area. Why does Mr. Hamilton's budget, even if it's wrong, look more like the budget of other schools? Ours does not look like other schools in the newspapers. Does the paper have it all wrong? I'm not sure. Okay. I think I've done well. I feel I'm concerned for our community. I feel that there is little community in ours right now. We're broken. We need to pull together.
Hello, I am Karen Smith, and I've been a teacher in the high school business department since 1993. I am one of the individuals whose position will be cut under the 2011-2012 proposed budget that is up for adoption tonight. I currently teach careers, financial management, and marketing for students in grades 9 through 12. I have taught over 1,300 students, and outside of the classroom, I have advised several clubs, chaperoned dances, attended school-related activities, and sporting events. Student enrollment has increased in the business department over the past years due to keeping our courses current and relevant and lessons relevant to the students' lives and providing extra educational opportunities, such as Business Honor Society, Junior Achievement, inviting in guest speakers into the classroom, organizing student interview days with local employers, and arranging job shadow placements in the community. During my 18 years in this district, I have willingly worked above and beyond my job description because I believe education is about the students and the opportunities that we can bring to them. So imagine my surprise on March 30th when I was informed I was being laid off and given, which I need to share, a generic form letter without my name even printed on it, and an exit interview. Circle 1 through 4 and mail back, please. After 18 years of dedicating my time and efforts to this school district. As I am processing now, as I'm processing how this decision will affect my life, I also find myself concerned that those who will be left behind in the aftermath of the decision to cut positions so excessively. These cuts will impact course offerings, increase class size, and leave 7 empty classrooms in the high school alone. Laying off teachers may be a quick financial fix to the lines of the budget for next year, but it will be at the expense of our students' educational future. Thank you.
Hello, so I wanted to listen to what you guys had to say tonight so I could kind of give some comments on the budget. First of all, Dr. Zachary, I do respect the amount of experience you bring to the table, a different perspective coming from another set of schools. Also appreciate that the board brings their own set of skills to the table. But even with all of you here, you can't know everything, obviously. I think we should take advantage of whatever experience we can take advantage of. So I think Bill Hamilton presents some valid points. I think you just heard a teacher who has some financial management background here. I think you have to take advantage of all those aspects when you think about what's going on with budget. For example, Bill Hamilton brought up the substitute teacher cost. He said, I think in the presentation, that's typically higher than most of the districts our size. Dr. Zachary made the comment of, well, I can just lower the budget amount, but that doesn't make sure it's going to be lower. But what we should be asking is, why is it that high? So if your car is using that much gas, maybe you want to get a tune-up. If the substitute teachers are taking more time than they normally would, is it because we don't have enough hand sanitizer in the hallway, or is it because maybe the morale is down now, which is understandable, and maybe that's why they're not coming to work. So we got to look at these things systemically and find out, what is the problem, and try to make some corrections to that. The other thing I'm going to say is, the budget as it's presented, whether Bill presented that or not, there's a good chance that could be voted down. I don't know if we've still made a backup plan. So if you look at contingency, you're saying it might need to be higher than that. One of the things West Genesee did is they took their budget and they laid it side by side. Here's what our proposed budget looks like. Here's what the contingency budget looks like. Here's what it is person by person, to show what the effect would be under one or under the other. And I think that will make people better realize, what the situation is.
by the minute, which I can understand. So what I would say is if this is the budget we end up adopting, don't stop working. So there needs to be a backup plan, and I would use this time going forward to come up with what that backup plan is. Take advantage of the inputs from Bill, from, you know, members of the board, from other school districts, because everybody's dealing with the same situation, and try to come up with another possibility besides just going to contingency. Maybe contingency is more taxes, but, you know, it gives us a little less control over things. So we need to be creative. I was talking to the tennis coach today at the boys tennis match, and he said next year, even though he's planning on cut, he said that he was already talking to other schools to have all the matches local here at door numbers, so we don't have to pay for transportation costs. And he would take his stipend and try to get it reduced just to buy tennis balls, and he would basically give it back. So I appreciate Coach Rectorshell's being that dedicated to, he's probably got like 10, 15 kids, but he wants to make sure they have that activity. So I guess what I'm saying at the end is, you know, you guys have skills, but, you know, you need to swallow some pride and use other people's knowledge. You know, we need to get our own ego pride back and make sure our kids are successful in life, and that's the main thing.
Thank you, Skylar.
Good evening. Last year, the budgets cut the art department by a third. This year, the proposed budgets cut the art department by additional 0.7%. This concerns me a great deal. These budget cuts, both this year's and next year's proposed budget, severely cut into the art programs of the school district. Studio art at the middle school will be lost. Electives at the high school will be lost. Time for creating displays in schools and community will be lost. And please reconsider the art, cutting the art department the way it's proposed right now. Remember, the arts teach children that problems have more than one solution and that questions have more than one answer. Thank you.
Virginia.
Yeah, it's been a long day, handwriting. They do well in English, because of my handwriting. Good evening, everybody. I just have a quick question. I was glad to see that the union representative for the teachers were here, because there's a lot of different discussions going on in the community about pay raises. And as everyone knows, when you run a business, 70+% of your business is attributed to salary expense. So as a taxpayer and someone who will cast a vote for or against this budget, I would like to hear from members of both administrators and teachers as to why they are against the pay freeze, given taxpayers are looking at a 10% average increase in their tax levy over the last 2 years. Thank you.
Paul Google.
Thank you. I'm here today to speak primarily about indoor track. I appreciate I got a nice email from Mary Ellie about a letter I sent to the board talking about indoor track. I'm also here to talk and ask the board and the community to be very careful driving, because the runners that you don't hit would be my son Jack, many of the people back there, Greg, Steve, many people. 2 years between the summer, the 7th and 8th grade, Jack ran track with Mr. Derrick in 7th grade, and then he trained with the cross-country team over the summer, and they had a wonderful team. They were #1 state ranked. They were terrific. They almost came through at the state championship. A few kids got sick, but at the beginning of that summer, they said, Mr. Roman said to me, he goes, every day think about winning a state championship. And for the last 2 years, every day, these kids have been thinking about a state championship. And a big part of what's getting there is really having that 3 seasons of training. It's 31 kids. It's probably the largest winter sport. I really don't know the numbers in the other sport. It's very inexpensive. And we're willing to work, the parents and the group, and really probably all sports, the people here, because whatever it is, they call it extracurricular, but I know when I went to school, I lived for soccer. It's different for every kid. This has been a wonderful community. Oh my God. My kids, you can't have these experiences in a big school district, because you have to be a star to compete in there. My children have done so many sports, We just had the musical. It's amazing what the parents in this community do. The time they said, sometimes it's the same parents, other parents chip in how they can, but there's just, you can do it all. You really can do it all in JE. You know, I'm really worried about the academic program because that is taking a hit, and a lot of it is, you know, state-driven. I mean, that is the primary driver. When we have people running commercials saying, congratulations, Governor, we caught 10 billion of waste. Well, my kids, coaches, and teachers are waste. Don't let people say that kind of thing. If they say we made hard choices and caught $10 billion because we thought so, that's one thing. But don't say we did waste. The people walking out the door in June are not waste. So we really need to be careful how the words we're using. And I really think if we pull together the community, the extracurricular, that is where the passion comes from, and the academics. You need it all, but I know people are willing to work and to do what it takes to keep things alive. So whether it's a student who's a runner, if it's a student who's a basketball player, it's a student, whatever it is, if they're a musician, anything, work together, you know, shorten seasons, parents help with transportation, whatever, fundraising, people are willing to do it. Give the kids the opportunity because you don't know what their passion is, and we really need to support them and to trust each other, get back to being the Jordan Alberts that has been forever, you know, so thank you.
Jessup Berger.
I'm here to just say that I'm a librarian at Jordan Alberts High School, and I've been here a long time. And so it's been a great family. We really have that. And this year's been very distressing. And I would like to say I'm so proud of the teaching staff because every day they came in and they kept this building calm and cool, and the kids went on about the business. Sometimes the winds were pretty strong outside. Anyway, I'd like to say that I think that the teachers are more important than things. I don't know what phase 2 of the construction project is. It's beyond my pay grade. But I think it's most important to keep our teachers. And I hope that when decision making goes on, we give that the highest priority. I also would like to speak to the electives. Sometimes electives seem to people that are not in the building to be optional. And, but they are so important. We've had college courses, music, art, technology, business, but not leaving anyone out. But they're also important for the kids. And when I watch the evening news, things are changing in our society. And people no longer go to work for a corporation and work the rest of their lives. So to me, what we give them in the electives are some of the things that are going to sustain them. And particularly in business. And I know a lot has been said about business tonight, but my husband's a small businessman, he's self-employed, so it hits home to me. When you do a Schedule C, what the heck is that? What's profit and loss? A lot of our kids are going to be carpenters and plumbers and maybe self-employed. And if you don't get those concepts in high school, probably will never get them. I don't know about you, but I guess the business course, when I learned to type, was the best one. It sustained me all through my life. So I just hope we think about the teachers being the most important thing, the staff, because they're there for the kids every day. It's a wonderful staff. And thank you.
A lot of my perceptions early in the school year have changed over the course of the year. I was very supportive of the board at first, and over the course of the year, I've had a lot of doubts come to my mind and a lot of anxiety about some of the decisions you've made. Cutting 30 teachers, it's been very hard to swallow at this point. The next part that really bothers me is they're constantly bringing up the pay freeze for the teachers. The big pink elephant in the middle of the room are the lawsuits. I didn't see any slide particularly focused on the lawsuits. The administration is out. Why can't we talk about some of that? That's what really irks everybody in the community when they're looking up at the board. It's like, you've made all these poor decisions over the years that have set us back $250,000, and now you're asking the teachers who are at the student side teaching them to take the pay freezes. You've given extreme raises to people in the administrative offices that nobody in industry right now is getting a 26% raise or whatever the raise is that someone might have gotten over the course of the year. And you're asking them to take a pay freeze. Maybe if we turn back the clock with where people's salaries were a year ago and say, maybe if the administration takes this pay, maybe we can ask the teachers to take a pay freeze. But to ask them to take a pay freeze when you're giving your people you're sitting next to at the table huge raises, I find that very insulting. Bill Hamilton spoke. Now, he hasn't been allowed on the school grounds since last summer. I find it because he had access to the financial records since last summer. So he presented the best information he could come up with to a group of community members and teachers last week. He spent his own time doing it. He didn't have to do it. He didn't have to do it. He's trying to help the community and help the board make some decent decisions. And instead of looking at that information he gave you and saying, how do we merge it with what we have, it seemed like it was not criticism. Well, Bill's wrong here, Bill's wrong here, and he's off by this amount here and this amount there. Has anybody sat with Bill since that was presented to try to see what he meant by some of those things that you didn't seem to understand? Did you meet with Bill since he presented that? You could go over some of the items that Dr. Zacher said he didn't understand, like the pay for teachers, like the substitute thing. It might help to sit with Bill Hamilton and maybe discuss some of the stuff, because he does have a history here, and he understands where some of the numbers came from that maybe might help future.
We worked on his budget from last year's issue, so that he
okay.
compared his budget from last year's issue.
Speak up.
These are just some suggestions. That's all. Suggestions. So that's some of what I wanted to say. All right, so I guess I have a minute left. But it would be interesting to see some line items when you send out the budget for the legal part of it. We get round figures, and this is about what we spent and this and that. But as a community member, I'd really like to see what we've spent on the fees so far this year, and compare that to last year and the year before, and maybe project what you might spend some of that. And then maybe the community will be more willing to vote on different issues, or the vote on the budget, But at this point, I'm not feeling real good about a 7% tax hike. And I have elderly parents in the community, and there's single parents in the community, and I think that's a lot to ask. So that's all I have to say tonight.
Michael Pixler.
One thing I did want to mention is that my sister-in-law is actually a teacher in Albany, New York, west of Rochester, and their school district is a little bit larger than ours, and I think there were going to be about 8 teachers at that district. And we've all mentioned that there are a number of others that really have a lot better scenario for next year than what looks like for us. As many of you know, I'm a 4th grade teacher here at Ramsdale Middle School. I've been at Ramsdale itself since the early 90s. I've lived here in this community for over 20 years. This entire year has been very challenging, but that's something I expect from this job. And it's been very sad. which I don't expect at all from this job. Not only do you know a lot of that story, but so does much of the rest of Onondaga to you accountants. A week ago, that sadness was amplified and made much more profound in the revealing of the decision to seriously decimate our entire school district by eliminating countless people and programs. For sure, this will make our job as teachers who are left much harder, if not nearly impossible. But much more importantly, we lose a host of outstanding teachers, many of them young and soon to emerge as the backbone of our school district. I've worked with 2 of those soon to be laid off excellent teachers as a mentor over the past 3 years. I've worked alongside many others who show a consummate amount of enthusiasm, patience, and perseverance. Obviously, all of us have been here for many years, and we've been in those teachers, and we've been in early stages of our career. We need everyone to make this work. We need people at all stages to really produce quality education. We need reasonable class sizes. We need reasonable class loads and all of the course offerings, at least, that we presently have. 2 of my own children are in high school right here in this building. I see them both thriving because of the teachers with whom they work, the opportunities that they have. I hope and would like to feel confident that they will, when they get ready to leave here, that they will be prepared to fortify to face the world and someday make a difference in some community. I don't know exactly what we can and should do, but I know for sure that no matter who is at fault for this mess that we're in this district, in New York State, or in the entire country, we need to recognize that we have to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. We need to say that we cannot get rid of so many outstanding people who will be the future of our teaching staff. We cannot get rid of important educational programs that will be the reason why people will come here to live. That's the bottom line. We are a school district. We can do without a lot of things. We cannot do without educators and call ourselves a school district.
Good evening. I was happy to see some numbers tonight in the budget presentation. It clarified some of my concerns, but I still need a lot more specifics. I need to be more clear on line items, such as, for example, in BOCES, there's a lot of numbers up there in BOCES, but I really don't know what BOCES totally entails what you're talking about. I know there's a lot of programs in BOCES. I've been an educator myself. For example, are we participating in the divisions program? If so, how many kids are participating? I know it's pretty expensive per child to participate in that program. Is that something we've looked at? I need to see all these things spelled out. And I also need to see things spelled out like publication 8. I see that that's been cut from our program. Isn't that a grant funded item? No, we pay for that. Okay, that's good. I know we have assessment personnel and staff. I need to see what we're still paying them. Can that be redone in some way? Assessment, people to gather assessment here and gather assessment. I know we have that still. I never see a quote for what we're paying them. What about Ms. Hugh and other people that are still on staff? Why don't we have any lines on them and what we're paying them? We still pay what Mr. Zane, all these people we're still paying out money to. It continues to be a problem. Now we have these new people that are doing FOIL requests. And the FOIL request issue is that, because we're always hearing about how the FOILs are taking up so much time. Well, these weren't ours, and it's being blamed on the community. The community needs a FOIL request. They need them answered. They need them answered. Well, you know what? We have every right to have them answered. If but it's not. We didn't create these problems for the FOILs. You created them. You're the ones that wanted this change of staff, this change of people, and now we have more people doing that. I mean, a lot of these things are concerns, and you keep. I'm just not clear on all these line items. You still want. I need everything spelled out for me, and I think many other people do in the community too. I need to see what we're paying these teachers, who we're cutting, how many librarians we have, what have we looked at, how many technology people we have. I need to see what's going on here, and I'm not seeing it. And I've taught in public schools for 38 years, and I've seen these things before in budget presentations. So I just don't get a clear picture here at all, so that I can comfortably vote on a budget. You know, I'll vote for a 7.3 budget if I get a clear presentation, and that's my concern.
Hi. I'm concerned about the budget. I have been since November. I initially asked in November when we were going to start the budget process. It hadn't been started then. I again asked Dr. Zacher when we met with him for the community group in December. Has the budget been started? I asked again in January. It's been a long process. I knew the numbers from the state were going to be horrific this year. I assume you all knew as well. The goal of a school district should be to provide the best educational possible, best educational program for our students as possible. We are not doing that. We can't do that. And I have some issues with our spending and our decisions that we have made in the last 12 months, or maybe even longer. You have in your budget 2 suspended administrator salaries, and then 2 replacement salaries for those administrators. That's a lot of money. With benefits, that money could go towards our students. At what point are we going to reevaluate the decisions that have been made? We have to focus on the future. I know that. We can't dwell on the past, but it's time to reevaluate. It's time to think, do these charges have merit, enough merit to take away from our students, whether academically, extracurricular? At what point are we going to say, you know what, let's put everything aside and let's move on for the best and the betterment of our students? I'm not sure that is happening. One more thing. I spoke to Bill Speck, sorry Bill, at length a couple weeks ago. New York State is $15 million in debt with arbitrators. I'm assuming that you asked these questions before pressing charges and pursuing these legal issues. $15 million. Arbitrators do not even want to hear cases for 3028 charges. So therefore, it takes 2 years just to get an arbitrator to volunteer because they know they're not going to get paid. 2 years of paying salaries, replacement, legal fees. Do these charges have merit? Let's put the money back in the classrooms. Let's give more to our students and our taxpayers. I don't know if it's 7.3% budget will pass. There are a lot of people that cannot afford it. I, as a parent, I want the best for my children and everybody else's children. So yes, I would probably vote if I knew that things were headed in the right direction. But right now, to me, I'm not sure we're headed in the right direction. So please reconsider things in our budget that could be changed and the money could be reallocated. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I know that some of the decisions you have to make are not easy, but I would be remiss if I did not address the cuts that are being made to the counseling department. The counseling department is slated to lose 1 guidance counselor and 2 social workers, almost a third of the department. I don't expect a lot of people to know exactly what our services entail. What we provide is not only silent and a lot of times behind the scene, but very difficult to measure. How do you measure prevention? I will tell you how I measure prevention. I measure it in calling a parent to tell them that I'm concerned about their child because they have thoughts of suicide. I measure it in the number of child protective reports I make for physical and sexual abuse and neglect. I measure prevention in getting a child eyeglasses, dental work, and immunizations. When a child literally says to me, "Will you keep me safe?" I consider helping to keep them safe something that you cannot measure. I can assure you that none of these are exaggerations. What our students face each and every day cannot be left at the door when they enter our school. Expecting students to concentrate on schoolwork and to forget about what's going on in their lives is unfair. As adults, we struggle to do the same. Imagine what it is like to have a parent, a sibling, a friend, or even a pet die. Imagine having no heat or a comforter stuffed into a broken window, like I saw on a home visit last week. Can you imagine the first day of school having no backpack or supplies, or not having the tools available to get to you to begin the search for college? A breakup of a boyfriend or girlfriend, a fight with a friend. It doesn't sound like a big deal at our age, but to children and teenagers, it's devastating. Drugs, alcohol, cutting, social skills, peer mediation, not having a place to sleep at night. Divorce, poverty, social isolation, truancy, attendance, abuse. Pregnancy, grief, peer pressure, social pressure. The list goes on and on. After Christmas break, I started pushing into classrooms to present the Second Step program, an anti-bullying program. I have told the students in each class that as a district, we take bullying so seriously that students will be getting this program K-8 starting next year. The 2 positions that do this along with me have been slated to be cut. Let me close with a story. Last year, I attended an athletic event of a student I worked with for years and years. I've been to his home probably more than 30 times, saw him in school almost a daily basis for behavioral issues and support. We brought him clothes, food, field trip money, etc. Every single year, someone in the school district went out of their way to show the student they cared. There were days I never thought he would come to school, let alone play a sport. He almost never missed schools, and he tried out for a sport. I literally sat on the sidelines and cried because I never thought I would see the day that he would feel a part of this community and school. Counselors, teachers, coaches, aides, assistants, custodians, every single person got that student to the point. That's how I measure success. I can assure you that those of us in the counseling department that were spared our jobs are grateful and will do the very best we can, but we cannot possibly provide our students with all that they need. Most days, even with the counseling staff that we have today, it doesn't feel like there are enough hours in the day. It is not just the at-risk students, but all students. How do you possibly triage when someone asks you to help keep them safe? I ask you on behalf of the parents and students that feel they have no voice to reconsider these cuts. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Gina Kluger.
I wish I had time to prepare something, but I didn't. So I just wanted to say a few things. Being the logical person that I am, what I think I am, I always say there's 3 sides to every story. The 2 sides when the truth lies somewhere in the middle. That's usually what I find. I find it hard to believe. I've read what Bill Hamilton put together. I've read what you've put together, and I just find it hard to believe that the period of time that we're talking about, there can be that much of a difference in figures. I think it's somewhere in between. I also think that Dr. Zachary, with all due respect, more than once you made the remark about the lawsuits and being the responsibility of the community. And for that, I just want to say everybody takes a role in that. Both sides take a role in that too. It's been on both sides. There's give and take on both sides. So there's been things that have happened and actions and reactions, and that's how people have reacted to bring this all about and to bring the gloom and doom that we're all facing now. My gut is killing me at what's going on in our district, especially in our district with everything that's happening. And I wanted to echo the sentiments and the concerns of Jamie Cicino too, with the guidance department and the loss of a school psychologist and a guidance. And to leave her alone in the school with that many kids is insane. Many of you, I know, have very successful kids who have graduated from Jordan Albers, who worked very hard and graduated and excelled. I'm more worried, and I too have a daughter who's very successful, but I worry about all those kids that don't have the support that I can provide or you could provide to your kids. There's a lot of kids that don't have that type of support out there. It was
services that that office alone provides. If anybody has tried and worked to get a kid through a great four-year college, you know how many hours, how many long hours it takes to be able to be successful at that. Look at the job market right now. There's so many people laid off. The competition is fierce. It's fierce out there, and it's only going to get worse. Society is deteriorating. We have so many kids here that deal with so many other issues, and they run to that guidance office for support and guidance. And I just would implore you to please do not leave her or anyone alone in this office up here to deal with that many kids on a daily basis. It's just ludicrous. It's crazy. I also, last but not least, I would just like to thank every one of our awesome educators that we have in this school. I applaud you. You are a blessing to all of our kids. Thank you for all of you.
Gloria Richardson.
Tammy Gilbert. Tammy Gilbert. Maureen Doyle.
Good evening. Cuts have to be made. It doesn't matter where we came from, how we got here. Cuts have to be made. It's not an easy job. I do value the importance of extracurricular activities. I go to Old Forge, New York, graduated from Commonwealth High School. My gym class is walking across the street in the winter taking a ski lesson. Very valuable. But our mission is education. And I'm very troubled to think that you can lose all these valuable teachers for that level training, for example. It's very troubling to me. And how do we replace these teachers? Are we going to create an environment where good teachers won't want to come here? No doubt the enrollment will drop. I have people all the time with young children, not in school yet. They don't want the children to go to this school. They want to try to move. So I ask you to please really look at losing all these teachers. I mean, we have to cut, there's no question. Teachers are the most valuable asset of a school district. Thank you.
Barbara Hunt.
Probably can't get through a meeting without speaking to the music program just very quickly. On your slide indicated $24,000 cut in the budget for that, and a $17,737 cut in the supervisors stuff. My question is, I believe it's almost 40% of the budget. Am I correct with that? And I just wanted to know if the other programs, non-music programs that are being cut, the sports and so on and so forth, are they being cut by that percentage?
Not necessarily.
Is the percentage that cuts for the other programs less?
It was not a set percentage.
Okay. Well, I just happen to know that that's about 40% of the budget. So I just wondered if things would be, obviously they have to make cuts, but if things are going to be cut, and they should be cut there across the sports and music programs. Okay. The big deal is the guidance counselor stuff that I'm really, really concerned about, and I know you guys haven't heard me speak on this before. My children have been very successful here, and my son is a high average student. But what many of you don't know is that he has a 504 plan here for Disabilities Act, because he does have a disability. And he has been successful with this school, with the extra time and consideration and so on and so forth, and the useful laptop that he has been allowed. because of his disability. My big concerns are twofold. Number one, last year, James didn't get special exemption for his AP.
Barb, I don't know if it's best to be talking about your son's.
Well, let me just tell you why. The reason he didn't get it is because the paperwork wasn't processed, because nobody caught it. Okay? So he didn't get the exemption. He's got the exemption now because we moved forward, found out what the problem was, and it was fixed. Okay? There's the other square that I had questions with in one of these alternate plans, that it said that there's a merging of the special ed with another administrator. Okay, it was the special ed person who caught the problem that now is fixed. Okay, and if that administrator is merged with another, and if we don't have guidance counselors to help with these things, then how are these services going to be provided? My son's is only a 504 plan. I'm not even sure who's going to help write the plan to transition him to go to college. Okay? Because everything's changed. Everybody's in a different role. I don't even know who's writing his 504 for college. But who's going to write the second, third, and fourth, fifth grade 504 plans? We don't have anybody to write them. It's bad enough that all the plans that have to be written, the IEPs for the special ed kids, but the kids that have only 504s, and especially if it's a physical disability, not an educational issue, there's nobody to write those if you dissolve all these positions. So how are we supposed to provide services to the kids in need, in addition to the high excellers and all that other stuff? I don't understand how we're going to accomplish that. And I wouldn't want to be the parent of a 5th to 6th graders coming in when there's no guidance officers, nobody to write these plans. I don't get it. I don't know how we can fix it. But it's certainly not by cutting all these positions.
Hopefully it's probably my last time up here. Whatever else in the first place with that. Anyway, I just want to clarify that this publications aid position, that is not a full-time position. That is $25 a week. Okay, just so you know that's supposed to be. So that would be me. Okay, I did a career youth meal program and website and stuff like that. But I'm not up here to talk about me. I'm just curious right now. I understand that the elementary technology program. What's going on with that? What's going to go on with that? You have moved Tracy Fanning to a regular teaching position. Is there still going to be elementary technology? Right? Sorry, you have moved the technology teacher that taught elementary technology. Are we still going to do that? We have all these computers. We just hired another computer support specialist. Are we going to have elementary?
Those responsibilities will have to be assumed by the classroom teachers.
Okay, and you know how often they'll be getting into the technology lab, into the lab?
How long?
How often are they going to be able to get out there and have that information?
I do not have that information right now.
Okay, so the technology teaching portion is now going to be put on the regular teachers? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Are they going to be qualified to do that?
So yes, people use technology in all walks of life.
Okay.
And technology should be incorporated into the work that's done in the classroom.
Okay. Then you got a plan.
Okay, that concludes our comments this evening.
I just want to make a comment on the difference between Jordan Albert, what we're facing compared to other area districts. And Gary Rogan also brought this up. Jordan Albert is a low wealth district. We're having a lot. We are a low wealth district. We are heavily dependent on state aid. Wealthier districts who have less dependence on state aid are able to absorb the hurt more than we are. So there's the natural, we're facing it twice as hard as, say, our neighbors in Minneapolis. That was my comment. And what I also wanted to say was, because of this situation, because of the hardships families face here, I really, really do not want to see cuts in the guidance. If there's a way we can move something around. State requirements continue to increase on the trainees and continue training, and the number of committees that are established by the state that are mandatory. Right now we have 4 between 9 people, so for every board meeting and budget meeting, there's typically 4 committee members, 4 board members per committee. So this isn't going to affect me, but I'm concerned about how it's going to affect future board members who are going to be doing more work with less people. We're averaging 2 committees per person now, and that's going to go up probably 3, some maybe on 4. It's going to be out to vote. I don't know how we're going to get that. Are we on the plus?
First, for clarification, we did not, as a board, bring this proposition to the table. I've heard a lot of that, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that we, as a board, I personally, I can't speak for the entire board, but I'm against this for the reasons that Diana said, but also for the main reason that I've heard back from the community for the reason why they think that we actually brought it to them. I value every single person's opinion at this table, or whomever is sitting at this table. They bring a different perspective other than mine, and in a lot of cases, it's helped me make clearer, broader, wiser decisions. And to move from 9 to 7 takes 2 valued community member opinions off of this table. And so that's the reason why I'm not for it, along with Diana's point. I don't think people really have the true understanding that this isn't a 1 or 2 night a week or a month scenario. This is a job, folks. And you know, we all, whoever runs, I would think, and whoever's sitting at this table takes it very seriously. They do their own research. They do a lot of their own interaction with the community members. It's a lot of hours. And so to ask individual people, community volunteers, some of you in this audience that are running for the school board, to put in even more hours than you're expecting to do, and trust me, it's more than you think you're going to be. I think it's something we need to seriously consider as a community, to protect the community.
Any further discussion?
I also agree with that we need as diverse a number of opinions as possible. And also, as you can see, oftentimes our jobs interfere with thinking meetings and stuff. We've got it down to 7 members, and 1 or 2 people are absent. We really risk getting close to not having a quorum available at any given meeting. So I too would be opposed to this.
Yeah, we're not voting, it's going out. We're voting.
It is mandatory that we put this out to a vote to the public, so even though the board is saying it's not something that we recommend, we tonight cannot say we can vote no, but it still has to go out to the public. That's just not all of you. So the board is, several members have said that they're not in favor of this, but even though they vote no, this will still go before the voters. Okay? All right. Any further discussion?
Well, I just think I'm in favor of letting the community speak by voting. However, I just want them to say, I want to understand
how it impacts this.
I'm not sure if everyone's clear that this is brought to the school district by a petition signed by 54 community members. They want this board to go from 9 members to 7 members. Okay, so that's why we agree that we'll put it up to vote, but it's important for all of you to understand, and for future board members who will be on this board, that you're asking 7 people to do work, to do quite a bit of work, and have a lot of responsibility.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Brian? Amy? Under Eagle?
I voted yes, all of them.
All right. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Could I have a motion for Michael Gallagher to move? Henry? Amy? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Do you have a need for executive session tonight? I'm requesting executive session tonight to discuss matters of the appointment of the superintendent for another school district and to discuss the performance history of 4 particular persons. Can I have a motion, please, for executive session? Erica? Roger? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Meeting adjourned to executive session at 9 o'clock. We will not be conducting any further order. This is
Good night. Well, it's probably in bed now. I'm hoping mine is asleep.
I do, I love her. You get great. it.